mysterious book that reveals exactly what happens when we die. Stop. Listen. You may never get this chance again. This video, it could disappear at any moment. And if it does, so will the truth you were never meant to hear. What if I told you everything you know about death is a lie? That the moment your heart stops beating, your story doesn't end? That your consciousness doesn't vanish. It enters a realm so vast, so terrifying, so astonishing, that even modern science can't explain it? Imagine this. You take your final breath. The world around you fades. But instead of nothingness, you awaken. A brilliant light engulfs you. Voices whisper. Shadows move. You stand at the edge of a doorway to something far greater than life itself. But what happens next? Do you ascend to heaven? Do you see God? Or do you become lost forever? For over 1,000 years, an ancient text has claimed to hold the answer. A book so powerful, so dangerous, that only a few have dared to study it. Hidden deep in the mountains of Tibet, the Tibetan Book of the Dead isn't just a guide to the afterlife. It's a map, a blueprint for navigating the unknown. A set of instructions so precise, so detailed, that it claims to show you the exact moment your soul departs and what awaits on the other side. But here's the catch. One wrong move, one moment of hesitation, and you could be trapped. Not for a day, not for a lifetime, but for eternity. This isn't a myth. This isn't a theory. This is the most chilling, most profound revelation about death ever uncovered. And today, you will see it for yourself. But be warned, once you hear this, once you truly understand, you will never see life or death the same way again. Are you ready to know the truth? Stay with me, because we begin now. The first bardo, the terrifying moment of death. What if I told you that dying is the easy part? That the real nightmare begins after your final breath? That the moment your body turns cold, your mind awakens to something far worse than death itself? Most people believe death is peaceful, a quiet fading, a gentle release. But what if they're wrong? What if the moment you die, you are thrown into a reality so overwhelming, so chaotic, that your very soul is ripped from everything you've ever known? Picture this. You are dying. Your vision blurs. Your heartbeat slows. Your lungs struggle for air, but then silence. Your body collapses. Your loved ones sob. The world around you disappears. And for a split second, there is nothing. No pain, no fear, no sound, just an endless black void. And then, the light appears. Not just any light. A blinding, brilliant radiance, unlike anything on earth. It is warm, all-encompassing, limitless. It feels like God Himself reaching out. And in that moment, you have crossed over. You're no longer part of the world you left behind. But before you can even process what's happening, a force pulls at you. It drags your consciousness forward, hurling you into the unknown. And suddenly, you're standing at the edge of eternity. This is the first bardo, the most critical, most fleeting moment in your journey through death. And if you're not prepared, this is where everything goes wrong. Tibetan monks, mystics, and even modern researchers claim that this is the single most important moment of your entire existence. The moment that determines whether you are freed from suffering or trapped in an endless cycle of death and rebirth. And here's the terrifying truth. The light is not just a vision. It is a test, a final divine trial. If you can recognize this radiant brilliance as your own true nature, if you can merge with it, if you can surrender to its infinite presence, you can be liberated. You can break free from the cycle of life and death. You can return to God, to the source, to the eternal peace beyond all suffering. But here's the problem. Most people fail. They do not recognize the light. They are blinded, overwhelmed, paralyzed by fear. And that fear is their downfall. Because the light does not wait. It vanishes. And when it does, so does your chance at salvation. Now, ask yourself this. When your moment comes, will you be ready? Will you recognize the truth? Or will you fall into the same trap as countless lost souls before you? Because the instant you hesitate, the light fades and something else takes its place. A darker force, a swirling abyss of memories, emotions, and regrets. The weight of your entire life crushing down on you at once. Every mistake, every failure, every sin laid bare before you. There is no hiding here, no pretending, no second chances. Everything you have ever done becomes the force that pulls you deeper. Do you remember the anger you held onto? The greed, the jealousy, the bitterness you never let go of? Now, they consume you. The Tibetan Book of the Dead warns that unprepared souls become lost in their own minds. They do not recognize the light, so they cling to what they know. And what they know is fear, pain, and attachment. This is why the first bardo is so dangerous. Because the moment you reject the light, you begin to fall. At first, you see only shadows. Faint, shifting figures in the distance. But as the light disappears, these shadows take form. And then you hear it. The whispers, faint at first, murmurs drifting through the void. Voices calling your name, luring you deeper. And then they grow louder, harsher. They mock you, remind you of every failure, every regret. The Book of the Dead describes this moment in chilling detail. Some souls see their loved ones, not as they were in life, but as twisted, distorted reflections, cold, unfamiliar, unrecognizable. Others see strangers, beings cloaked in darkness, standing at the edge of their vision, watching. And then the visions begin. Some are beautiful, comforting, divine, but others are pure nightmare. Bright figures with blinding halos reach out, but when you come closer, their faces twist into monsters. Creatures with flaming eyes and mouths like endless voids whisper ancient secrets. Demonic figures tower over you, laughing, tearing at your soul. But here's the most terrifying part. These beings are not real. They are you, your fears, your doubts, your sins, manifested. And if you do not recognize them as your own mind's creation, they will swallow you whole. At this point, you have two choices. You can wake up. You can realize that these terrifying visions, these shadows, these demons, are just your own mind turning against you. You can let go, turn back toward the light, and be free. Or you can fall deeper. And if you do, there is no turning back. The Tibetan monks describe this as the most critical moment in all existence. If you fail to recognize the illusions, if you surrender to fear, if you believe the demons are real, you will be trapped. And where do you go when you are trapped? You are thrown into the next bardo, the next stage of the journey. And it is far, far worse. Because now, your mind has lost control. Now, you are at the mercy of the forces you refuse to face in life. Now, your suffering has only just begun. So now I ask you, what will happen to you when you die? Will you recognize the truth? Or will you become another lost soul, drifting in the abyss, searching for a way out that may never come? Because the first bardo is your only chance, the last test before eternity. And most people fail. But you don't have to, because by understanding this now, by preparing today, you can ensure that when your time comes, you will not be afraid. You will not hesitate. You will not be trapped. You will see the light. You will recognize it, and you will be free. But the journey does not end here. Because even if you survive the first bardo, the trials that await are even more terrifying. Stay with me, because what comes next will shake you to your very core. The second bardo, the realm of visions, where souls are tested. You escaped the first bardo. The light came, you hesitated, and now you're falling. You didn't merge with the divine. You didn't recognize the light as your own essence. And now, the path before you is far more dangerous. What happens next? If you thought the first bardo was terrifying, you haven't seen anything yet. Because now, you're no longer in control. Now, you're trapped inside your own mind. This is the second bardo, the bardo of visions. And what you see here will determine your fate for eternity. Imagine waking up in a world that feels familiar, but isn't. Everything around you shifts, twists, warps. One moment, you're standing in a golden field, bathed in sunlight. The next, You're surrounded by endless darkness. You turn. Shadows flicker at the edges of your vision. Figures move, but when you look, there's nothing there. Then the voices begin. Soft at first, a whisper calling your name. You strain to hear. Is it someone you know? Then another voice. Then another. And suddenly, a chorus of sounds flood your mind. Some are soft, comforting, like the prayers of loved ones long gone. Others are sharp, mocking, filled with malice. They know your thoughts. They know your fears. They know your sins. And then, the visions appear. At first, the figures you see are beautiful. They glow with an unearthly light. They radiate peace, wisdom, divine knowledge. They extend their hands, offering comfort, guidance, salvation. But there's something off. Their smiles seem too perfect. Their eyes, too deep, too knowing. Their words just slightly wrong. They tell you things you want to hear. You are good. You are worthy. You are safe. Come with us, and you will be at peace. And for a moment, you want to believe them. But something inside you whispers, this isn't real. Because these figures are not angels. They are not here to guide you to heaven. They are reflections of your own mind. The Book of the Dead warns that in this stage, souls often mistake these beings for divine messengers. They clutch at them, follow them, believe their words. But they are only illusions. They are the desires, attachments, and comforts you refuse to let go of in life. And if you follow them, you will be pulled deeper into the bardo, further from salvation. And then the visions change. The golden light fades. The warmth vanishes. The voices turn from whispers to screams. And suddenly, they are everywhere. Towering figures with flaming eyes. Mouths filled with endless rows of teeth. Clawed hands reaching for you. Shadows twisting into monstrous shapes, crawling, writhing, consuming everything in sight. And they're coming for you. They speak in a language you don't understand. Yet you know exactly what they're saying. They remind you of every sin, every lie, every selfish act. They do not judge you. They simply show you. And in that moment, you feel everything. Every time you cause pain. Every time you ignored someone in need. Every time you let anger, envy, or greed take hold of you. Now, those emotions surround you, and they have taken form. Your heart pounds. You try to run, but there is nowhere to go, because this is not a physical place. This is you. These terrifying figures, the demons, the monsters, the chaotic, raging storm around you, are not external forces. They're the parts of you that you refuse to face in life. Your anger, your fear, your guilt, your shame, all the darkness you carried, now staring back at you. And this is the ultimate test. Do you recognize these visions for what they are? Do you see that they are merely the projections of your own mind? Do you embrace them, accept them, understand that they are not real? Or do you let the fear consume you? Because if you fail to recognize the truth, the nightmare does not end. The Book of the Dead warns that souls who do not recognize their own mind's creations become trapped. They believe the demons are real. They run, they fight, they beg for mercy, but there is none. Because there is no enemy, there is only the self. And so, the suffering continues. For those who cannot break free from fear, this bardo stretches endlessly. A cycle of visions, horrors, regrets, fleeting moments of peace, followed by even greater darkness. Some souls stay here for centuries, others forever. And the worst part? They don't even know they're trapped, because eventually the fear becomes their reality, and they forget they ever lived at all. But there is hope, because even in this chaos, even in this torment, there's a way to escape. The Tibetan masters teach that if you recognize the demons as illusions, they lose their power. If you do not fear them, they cannot touch you. If you see through the deception, the visions dissolve. And then the light returns. For a brief moment, you get one last chance. A final opening. A doorway back to truth. Will you see it? Or will you let the visions drag you down forever? Now think about this. If you were to die right now, would you be ready? Or would the demons win? Would you recognize these terrifying beings as your own mind? Or would you scream, run, and sink deeper? Because the bardo of visions is not some distant myth. It is a mirror, a reflection of who you are right now. And what you carry in life is what you will face in death. So what lives inside you? What are you hiding? What are you avoiding? Because one day, sooner or later, you'll have to face it. And if you're not prepared, it will consume you. This is the second bardo. And most souls never escape. Are you ready for what comes next? Because the journey is far from over. The third bardo, the final judgment, where your fate is sealed. You survived the first two bardos, but you're not free yet. The light came, and you missed it. The visions came, and you fell into fear. Now, you're drifting, suspended between what was and what will be. Your next life is forming. But where will you go? Will you rise to the heavens? Be reborn into a new life? Or will you descend into suffering, bound by the weight of your own past? Because now, the decision is no longer yours. The third bardo, the bardo of rebirth, has begun. There's no more choice, no more struggle, no more light, no more demons. Now, there's only you, your mind, stripped of illusion, your soul, exposed. And then it happens. Memories explode through your consciousness. Every thought, every action, every hidden desire laid bare. You feel it all. Every moment of kindness, now a force pulling you towards something better. Every moment of selfishness, now a weight dragging you downward. And then you see them. Doors. Thousands of them. Some glowing, some dark. Some familiar, some terrifying. Each one leads to a new life. But you don't get to choose. Because your next existence has already been written. Imagine your soul as a magnet. A force pulling you toward exactly what you deserve. The weight of your past, the things you refuse to let go of, they are now deciding where you will be reborn. Did you live in anger? Did you let bitterness define you? Then the bardo responds. You are pulled toward a world filled with rage, violence, and suffering. Did you cling to greed? Did you chase wealth at the cost of your soul? Then your next life may be filled with endless hunger, endless longing, endless loss. But what if you lived with love? What if you sought truth, helped others, and walked in faith? Then you feel yourself rising, pulled toward peace, toward wisdom, toward a new life of purpose. But here's the terrifying part. You have no say, because the force that decides is you. And the judgment? It is absolute. As you drift through the bardo, the doors begin to call to you. Some shine with warmth, a life of peace, a chance to do better. Some are twisted, dark, a life of hardship, a punishment of your own making. And then a door opens. You feel it pulling you in. The force is overwhelming. It is magnetic, unstoppable, inevitable. This is your rebirth. You are falling, not through space, not through time, but through your own fate. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this moment with chilling clarity. Your new body is waiting. Your new mind is forming. But before you enter it, before your soul is sealed inside, you hear one final whisper, a warning, a reminder. You have done this before, and you will do it again. And then, darkness, silence, and suddenly a cry. Your first breath, your first moment in a new world, a new life, a new cycle. And as you open your newborn eyes, as you forget everything you once knew, the bardo fades, but the journey is far from over. This is the greatest tragedy of all, because for most, this cycle never ends. Live, forget, repeat, over and over, for centuries, for lifetimes. And the worst part, you don't even know it's happening. Because the moment you take your first breath in your new body, your past life is erased. Your lessons, forgotten. Your soul, reset. You start again, as if nothing ever happened. And this is why so few escape. Because you were never told the truth. You were never prepared. You spent your life chasing things that don't matter. Money, status, power, none of it followed you. None of it helped you in death. So now you are here. Again, the Tibetan masters say yes. They say you can break free, but only if you prepare before it's too late. Only if you wake up now. Because the way you live determines the way you die. And the way you die determines the eternity that follows. So I ask you, what are you doing with your time? Are you preparing for what comes next? Or are you sleepwalking toward the same fate as millions before you? Because the cycle will not stop unless you break it. The bardo will not release you unless you see through it. And salvation will not wait. So now you stand at a crossroads. One path leads to awareness, truth, freedom. The other? Back to the cycle. What will you choose? Because one day you will die. That is not a question. That is a fact. And when that moment comes, will you rise toward the light? Or will you fall, trapped in illusions, lost in your own mind? This is your warning. This is your moment. Do not waste it. So now you know, death is not the end. It is not silence. It is not rest. It is a doorway, a trial, a final test before eternity. And most people fail. They don't see the light. They don't recognize the illusions. They don't escape the cycle. And so they fall. Again, and again, and again. But you have a choice. Because you were given this message. You were called to hear this truth. That means right now, you have something most souls never get, a warning. So what will you do with it? Will you keep living as if none of this matters? Will you keep chasing things that turn to dust? Or will you open your eyes? Because one day, sooner than you think, your moment will come. Your breath will slow. Your heart will stop. And when it does, everything you've ever done will come rushing back. What will you see? Will you see a life of love? A soul filled with kindness? A path that leads to heaven? Or will you see regret? Fear? A soul trapped in darkness? Lost in endless wandering? The time to decide is now. Pray. Pray for forgiveness. Pray for wisdom. Pray for the strength to walk in faith before it's too late. If you are ready, if you truly seek salvation, write your prayer in the comments below. Let heaven hear your voice. Let God see your heart. Because the book of the dead may reveal the journey, but only God can guide you home.